The GOG summer sale is still ongoing, so get some DRM free games at insane discounts before they're gone, beginning with Broforce, the all-action run and gun title that is just bro-tastic, where the action, bro puns, and tributes to 80s action movies are wonderful, and with the 4th of July right around the corner, get this to keep if you don't own it. I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway here and not just recommending indie games in this video, with the martial arts title Absolver being of interest, where the ability to customize your playstyle is one of the main draws. This comes to us from the team that went on to make Sifu, but where the earlier title is still worth a look. One of my favourite puzzle Metroidvanias is ALWA'S Legacy, a throwback 16-bit title that is the companion title to the 8-bit ALWA'S Awakening, where this title is awesome, being a twist on the usually more combat-heavy Metroidvanias that we have become used to, where exploration and puzzles are key here, although there is still combat and boss fights, but it's a charming little game worth a play. One look at Ash of God's Redemption, and I won't fault you for thinking that it is the Banner Saga since it sports a similar art style, but no, this is from a different developer, but it's also a turn-based tactics title of interest. The game has one of the most interesting adaptive narrative storytelling systems, where the main characters can die and the story will still play out, where it's a very grim world with punishing combat being one for tactics fans. A very underrated Metroidvania is 8 Doors' ARUM'S Afterlife adventure, one that, admittedly, has a very dull colour scheme of largely browns and deep reds, but where this draws upon Korean folktales, which is something different. This title is certainly more combat focused, where you can delve into the afterlife and the 8 doors of purgatory to search for your father's soul, being worth a play. A gorgeous time-bending JRPG is Cris Tales, one where you will notice the very interesting screen, which is split into 3 areas, where you're playing in the past, present and future all at the same time, where you play as the newly awakened Time Mage and her party battling against the Time Empress herself. The time aspect is of course the most interesting part, being used both in combat and exploration, and wrapping your head around this concept is the fun part. The game that put Supergiant on the map is Bastion, a self-contained top-down action-adventure game which is excellent. While I love the weapon variety and music in this, so do play it if you have not, and even if you did, replaying this will still be a good time. If Final Fantasy XVI disappointed you as straying too far away from their roots, then may I recommend EARTHLOCK, a PS2 era style JRPG that is a real throwback, even down to the visuals, telling what other than an epic tale of saving the world. I like the variety of characters here, and especially the talent board progression system, which is unique. But if you grew up with the old school JRPGs like me, this will be of interest, with a sequel in development as well, so keep an eye on that. Stealth games are rare these days, but how does playing as an undead ninja assassin sound to you? Well, Aragami is exactly that, where you're sneaking around and getting the jump on your enemies, where this developer unfortunately has closed down, but this game and its sequel are still worth a play. Another non-indie title is Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor that follows up from Shadow of Mordor, which out Ubisoft back in the day, where the sequel is bigger and better with the amazing Nemesis system, once thought of as the next big thing in games, but copyrights and patents have limited its use, but is still a great experience, especially at 85% off. One of you in the comments of a recent video did remind me of DUSTFORCE DX, an action platformer that is more than 10 years old at this point, where it's a relatively underrated title where you play as a janitor who has to get rid of dust and debris in the world, where platforming and combat is surprisingly excellent in this. Ancestors' Legacy is a medieval, squad-based real-time strategy game where you're leading your army on epic raids and battles, where it captures the brutality of medieval times and is great in an almost company of heroes kind of way. I'm not too big a fan of the original 3D Yooka-Laylee that was paying tribute to Banjo-Kazooie, where its sequel, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, one that is more like Donkey Kong Country, is more of my jam, being a wonderful 2.5D side-scrolling title that is cleverly designed. You can solve puzzles and use the environment in the overworld, which then affects the levels themselves, where the final level of the game, the Impossible Lair, is accessible right from the start of the game, but where you're playing through normally to get extra lives for this challenge. Aven Colony is a futuristic sci-fi city builder set on an alien planet, where you're expanding your colonies into massive, self-sustaining cities, having the classic scenario-based story campaign, which I quite enjoyed back in 2017. One of my favourite recommendations to make is EARTHLOCK's Lord of the Dead, a side-on, turn-based RPG with positional combat that I would best describe as a Darkest Dungeon-like, but where you play as a necromancer and are summoning and upgrading your minions from the gathered body parts of your enemies. It is more of a roguelite in structure where you can fail a run but then get meta progression upgrades as an undead necromancer, being fun and macabre and is my jam. Don't let the look of Dex fool you, since while it isn't the most impressive looking title, it is from 2015 after all, this is a very interesting side-scrolling open-world cyberpunk RPG inspired by the classics like Blade Runner and Neuromancer, with multiple ways to play, an intriguing central mystery, interesting characters and more, being a no-brainer at 95% off. If you love Diablo-style action RPGs, a package that is tremendous value for money is The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing Final Cut, one that is essentially 3 games in one, combining The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing 1 to 3, being an Eastern European mythology-based title where you play as the famed vampire hunter helping those in need. This package also adds a new endgame mode with plenty of replayability, where this game, solo or with a friend, is fun, and is an insane amount of content for less than $5.
I found this cave and there was this old man in there and he told me it was too dangerous to go in, so I jostled him about a bit, took my clothes off, dyed my hair blonde and went in. I'll show him. Turns out the old man was right. There were loads of blobs in there that gave me a hard time, but I killed them with my sword and bow. And I met a guy who gave me shoes and he followed me around as I started fighting more and more monsters.
One of my favourite underrated roguelites is Caveblazers, a Splunky-like title where you're delving into underground caverns, with the addition of AI companions that fight with you, character customization and interesting relics and items makes this excellent and another easy recommendation at 90% off. I love innovative games, which is why I take every opportunity I can to recommend SteamWorld Heist, a turn-based tactics title, but as a side-scroller instead of top-down or isometric, which is very unique, where you control a pirate crew of Steam bots from the SteamWorld universe, where manually aiming and ricocheting your shots around the level is one of the main mechanics, not to mention the excellent art and tactical combat. Speaking of tactics, perhaps the reason why I wanted to make this video is that XCOM 2 is at a whopping 95% discount, where, granted, it's 7 years old at this point, but it is still one of the best games of all time, where getting this at a low price and DRM free is a fantastic deal, with more sales recommendations in this video.
Has grown far more deadly.